Let me just say a few things on what I'm sure many of you are here to talk about. Just to review the bidding, myself and 5 others who are either former intelligence or former military officers put out a video restating the law that's in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That if you're given an order that's illegal, according to the UCMJ, you have the ability to push back on that order. Legal orders should always be followed, right? Just talking about illegal orders. We had a ton of folks in uniform and a lot of veterans come to us and raise real concerns about things that they were asked to do or things that they were concerned they might be asked to do, particularly with the deployments of the National Guard and uniformed military into our city streets, places like Chicago, and the strikes in the Caribbean against drug cartels. The legality, particularly on the going after the drug cartels, it's a secret list of groups that we're now in armed conflict with, and it's based on a legal explanation that's classified and not available to the operators who are carrying out these strikes. So they started coming to us and saying like, hey, I'm not sure what to do. Do you have any thoughts? Do you have any advice? And that's where the video came from. This is unfortunately not a hypothetical conversation. In 2020, President Trump didn't like the unarmed protesters that were in front of the White House in Lafayette Square, and he suggested to his Secretary of Defense and his Chairman of the Joint Chiefs in the Oval Office, can't they just, quote, shoot at the legs of the unarmed protesters? Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I give them a lot of credit. They knew immediately that would meet the definition of an illegal order, and they got out of there as fast as possible so that he didn't demand and try and get them to carry out that order. But here's the thing, regardless of whether you agree with the video or don't agree with the video, the question to me is this the appropriate response for a President of the United States to go after and seek to weaponize the federal government against those he disagrees with? We're not the first group of people that he's done that with. We are not going to be the last group of people to do that. He's tweeted dozens of times about us in the past 72 hours or so, as has the Vice President, saying that we should be arrested, we should be tried, we should be convicted, and made clear repeatedly that the sentence for that crime would be hanging. He's repeated that over and over, both in his statements and in memes. Because of that, we saw an immediate and massive uptick in the number of death threats that we got. I mean, we couldn't, hundreds, it's got to be past thousands now, both in calls to our office, in emails. The Capitol Police and the Sergeant of Arms decided to put myself and others on 24/7 security. They're here today. We had a bomb threat at my family farm where I live. My family has been harassed. It's been an immediate change to our life. And then last night, the Counterterrorism Division at the FBI sent a note to the members of Congress saying they are opening what appears to be an inquiry against the 6 of us. To be honest, the President's reaction and the use of the FBI against us is exactly why we made the video. He believes in using the federal government against his perceived adversaries, and he's not afraid to use the arms of the government against people he disagrees with. He does not believe the law applies to him. He has said that every which way to Sunday, which is exactly why we made the video, to give people some assurance that they weren't alone as they watch this stuff unfold. This is a scare tactic by him. He is attempting to use the FBI to scare us out of continuing to talk and have conferences like this. And I think it is a well-worn tactic of people who are trying to intimidate adversaries, their perceived enemies, out of public criticism of themselves. And again, this is not about any one video or even one sentence out of a video. This is about who we are as Americans, how we're going to engage with each other, whether we're going to use law enforcement and the military to target legally people who say things that is basic freedom of speech and restating existing law. Now, obviously, you hear I have a cold, but regardless of that and the attempts to intimidate us, that is not going to stop me or anyone else who made this video. In fact, I think it's more important than ever, given that he's used this same tactic on the private sector, on law firms, on universities. We are not the first group and we are not the last group that he is going to use the arms of the government. And again, if he's going to use the FBI against members of Congress, what would he do to average citizens who don't have that elected cover? So it's not going to stop me. It's not going to stop others. I feel strongly that we were doing what we believed was right based on our oath of office to the Constitution. And if he wants to use the FBI and Kash Patel against us, that is his choice, but it just reaffirms why we made this video in the first place. Okay, with that, happy to take your questions.
Senator, is there any concern at all that your video is in violation of 18 U.S.C. 2387, interfering with the loyalty and the morale of troops?
No, honestly, we restated what's already in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If you're asked to shoot at unarmed civilians, if you're asked to steal, if you're asked to do, from Nuremberg through Vietnam, through the Iraq War, places where I've served, we've had folks in uniform who have been asked to do things that is illegal and they've pushed back, right? It's not a new concept. So we were literally restating something that's been in law since World War II.
Senator Slotkin, why now? Meaning, the military actions in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific have been going on for a while. The roundups by Homeland Security and ICE have been going on for a while. I'm not sure what intelligence you may be privy to, or I guess, is there an illegality that all of a sudden you all felt you had to speak up, or why now with the video?
So I think it's two things. One, as we were seeing more uniformed military being sent into cities, right? An increasing number of cities. And by the way, the DC deployment, right? The National Guard in Washington, DC, just last week was ruled illegal by the courts, and they're having to leave Washington, DC by December 11th. So this isn't theoretical. But then also, for those of us on the Armed Services Committee, and many of us are, we've been trying to get answers about these strikes in the Caribbean, trying to understand, okay, which groups are we in armed conflict with? Show me the intelligence packages that are helping you go after these guys. I did some targeting against Al-Qaeda in the Iraq War. I'm open to the fact that these guys are probably bad guys. Let's go after them. But show your math. Show us the list of names of the groups we can go over, and show us the legal document that ensures for everyone up and down the chain of command that it's legal. That's a classified document that right now they're not allowed to see. So I think for me, it wasn't that there was any one incident. It was the sheer number of people coming to us and saying, I'm worried, I'm being sent to Washington, or I'm being sent to LA or Chicago, North Carolina now, and I'm concerned I'm going to be asked to do something that I don't know if I should do. So that's where it came from.
And Senator Slotkin, when you hear the president say seditious behavior in regards to your video and punishable by death and a bomb threat at your family home, what goes through your mind?
I just don't think this is the America that we want. This is not the political system that best represents who we are. Michigan knows this better than anybody, right? I grew up, my dad was a lifelong Republican, my mom a lifelong Democrat. When we were growing up, you could disagree and it could still be good-natured. It could be a healthy conversation. And so now things have become so polarized, and I believe leadership climate is set at the top. So it was immediate. The minute I saw the president said they should be hanged, and in effect, I knew that our security situation was going to change precipitously. Obviously, I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about my staff. I've served 3 tours in Iraq. I've done dangerous things. I signed up for this, but my family didn't. My nieces and nephews didn't. And so, of course, I think first and foremost about physical safety. But I don't think this represents who we are. And I refuse to believe that this is the new normal. I'm not going to accept that.
Can you talk a little bit about, with as much specificity as you can, the service members who are approaching you with concerns, especially in the cases you mentioned where it's not clear what is legal and what is not legal because those opinions are classified. What are they expressing to you?
Yeah. So they're saying things to me like, hey, I'm being called up. You know, I'm a reservist. I'm being called up, or a guardsman, excuse me. And I hear that we may be going to help ICE, you know, and being asked to do things in law enforcement, right? What if I'm asked to arrest someone? Military doesn't have the power to arrest someone. What if I'm asked to detain American citizens helping ICE? Like, is that legal? Is that not? What if I'm asked to do crowd control and things get violent? You know, I'm not trained on military or on police tactics. I'm trained to prevent against foreign attack. Right? There's no one better in the world than the military to prevent a foreign attack. But handling crowd control when something becomes agitated and violent, that's not what they're trained to do. So I think there's a lot of concern about the domestic deployments. And then certainly I've heard from people saying, hey, I'm taking part in these operations in the Caribbean, in and around Venezuela, and I'm not sure if this is legal. I just don't know. And the advice is always go see your JAG officer, your military officer, your legal officer of your unit, and express that and talk to them and ask their assistance in working through this. But those are the kinds of specific things that people are being asked to do. And I think particularly for me, you know, coming from the intelligence community, we're trained with such a clean red line that we don't collect on the United States. We don't engage on American citizens. We're about foreign threats. Our military is trained in protecting against foreign threats. We're really not experienced in looking inside the United States. So I think the domestic deployments really are what spurred a lot, and the increase in them that spurred a lot of activity.
We have time for one more question.
One of the things I'm wondering, a lot of everyday people might listen to the president and say that that video was seditious or that it was treason. What would you say to those everyday Americans?
Well, look, I think, like I said, people disagree with me every single day. Does that mean that I should be investigated by the FBI and that the President of the United States should suggest that I be hung? Disagree with me every day. Look, I'm Michigan's senator. There's not a day goes by that people agree with everything that I say. The question is it an appropriate response to suggest someone be hung and then knowingly make people less safe? And I would never do that to someone else that I vehemently disagree with. There are people in the Senate, there are people here in Michigan who I disagree with every single day, but I would never wish that they be threatened. I would never do anything that I thought increased their risk of being hurt. And certainly, I think I would try and be as judicious as possible if I was the commander-in-chief, knowing how influential that voice is in our country. Sorry, dig one more here in the back.
The threats to recall Senator Kelly as well as a military officer, obviously that's an increased threat that he's facing as a result of this.
Yeah, I think it's just a different way to weaponize the federal government. Right? He's a former officer, and so they have different inroads into him. Certainly the CIA has been talking about me, and I think it's just a different avenue for the same thing, which is the weaponization of the federal government against people you disagree with. And most senior leaders, I mean, to be honest, when we made the video, I have asked those questions of Secretary Hegseth directly. I have asked those questions of senior folks who have come up for confirmation since January of this year. And I've never seen a response like this, right? You've probably never heard of those exchanges, even though they were public. The president also was looking to distract from a lot of bad news last week, right? The president had the Epstein files sent to his desk that he now has to release after years of fighting against that. And then the jobs report came out, and we continue to have higher unemployment. So, look, there's lots of reasons why the president wants to be talking about this rather than something else. But to me, whether it's through the FBI counterterrorism unit, which is amazing to me, or the military, it's just different ways that this president is weaponizing the federal government. And I just don't think, no matter what party you're from, no matter what political leaning you're from, you shouldn't use the arms of the government to go after someone you just disagree with.